Some people ask me about things like deathbed confessions. The most common thing you hear is, I wish. I should have.
Wow.
And it's things like, I wish I'd taken that holiday.
Yeah.
Or, I wish I made up with my sister. Or, I should have worked less.
Yeah.
I should have taken the kids to school that day that they really bugged me to, but I said I was too busy. It's the simple moments in life that pass us by, that suddenly we go, I would give anything to get that school morning back with my child.
Welcome to Death, a Changing Industry. Today we have the great pleasure to welcome our new guest, Katie Costello. Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us and educating us on your
very
views
welcome.
and the work that you're doing. Let's go straight into you then.
Okay.
Your background, your sole midwife, female celebrant, and also a educator through the Dying for a Cuppa Masterclass.
Yeah.
So lots to unpick, which I'm really excited about doing. But first of all then, can we go into your background around end of life, which I find really interesting and fascinating?
Oh gosh, well it was never my path as I thought it would be. I used to work in retail, so I've always loved people. People have always been my thing. I've always been a talker. My voice is my superpower, as I say. And I always felt I wanted to do something with my life, but didn't quite know what it was. I knew I had like some kind of purpose. I'd had experiences with death, losing family members, my mum and dad, which I'm still very blessed to have. I've always been very open and honest with me. I attended funerals, nothing was taboo. So I've always been the kind of person that's been able to speak freely, openly, and communicate well with other people. And I'm definitely more of a heart person than a head person. So all of those things I found as my life and career changed, I started working in care. What I then very quickly realised is that everywhere I went, sounds a bit, I mean, I kind of laugh now, but everyone died. Yep. So there was a joke that I became the angel of death. Okay. But actually, as much as it was a joke, in some ways, it obviously absolutely wasn't. And I suddenly realised in my heart that I knew what to do with these people. There was something within me that was okay with all of this, and I seemed to know how to deal with it. My openness, my honesty was a huge support to people. And I just realised then that I was starting to, my stars were aligning. You know, I was finding that thing I always thought I wanted to do. And I was
gravitating towards it.
Yeah. I have quite a deep spiritual faith personally, so it really felt like all the stars were coming together for me. So I worked in domiciliary care, then I started to look after all the end-of-life or palliative patients. I was running the agency with my colleagues and managers and really kind of navigating that end-of-life care for people. Then realising that this was who I was, I started to delve deeper into my own self and figuring out what I wanted to do, and found soul midwifery, which instantly resonated with me. To get started on that journey, I changed direction and went to work at my local hospice on the community team, where I still am. So I've been there 7.5 years. So I'm part of the hospice at home team. So it's the hands-on care for people whose wish is to die at home in our local community, where I'm from, down in West Sussex. And then starting there, I then did the soul midwife training, and it was like everything was aligned. So I got obviously I completed multiple diplomas as well off my own back with dementia and end-of-life care, grief, bereavement counselling, really just started to invest in my journey and sink really into it. And yeah, once I did my soul midwife training and used my voice for the greater good, I started to share about my world and talk about death and dying, realising that not many people do. If they do, they don't know maybe who to talk to about it or don't know where to start. And I created an online community and focused on my social media channels as well to just share about everything in a very real, honest, human way with no clinical jargon, but a lot of heart, just so people knew that it didn't have to be this scary, sad, side, head tilt conversation that had to be very quiet. It can be shared. You can say death and dying. It's okay to say the D word, and it's okay to talk about the joy and the magic that can be found, as well as the gritty, hard, challenging stuff. And so because that social media platform kind of took off, my soul midwifery was taking off, I was supporting more funerals. I was getting involved in more death planning and funeral planning. So it seemed natural that I would add the celebrancy into my pot of training and skills. So then I started to do that, and I did my training with the Academy of Modern Celebrancy. And then it all kind of came together on another level with the education, because people were coming to me wanting to learn, or people were coming to me as a soul midwife to say, I just need your help to understand why my person's breathing has changed. Why is my person not eating and drinking? Why does their skin look different? Because it's the stuff that doesn't get talked about. the real life looking after somebody that's dying stuff that isn't shared on social media, or your doctors maybe and nurses don't talk to you about because they don't think, because they're doing a lot of it and they don't realise maybe what you're doing or what you're going through at home. So because of my sharing, I created this masterclass, and I'd had my Dying for a Cuppa sessions that I would run on Facebook every 4 or 6 weeks-ish, which were started in person in 2019, thanks to COVID, took everything online in 2020, and it's continued, and that community has built, and people now go out of their way to seek out those Dying for a Cuppa videos. So what I've done is pulled the real key information about the actual dying process and put that into a masterclass. Yeah. So it's an education program that everybody needs, healthcare, death care, Mr. Smith down the street, you and I, thing that everybody needs to understand. So we are prepared for our own death, our own changes in our body. But ultimately, then, for those that are going to be supporting someone, which we all will in some way, shape or form, the education is there from one human being to another, from one heart space to another, with no agenda or intention other than giving you the information you need. Yeah. So that's then how the masterclass evolved. And then that has since been formally accredited with the CPD, because they recognise their feedback to me was that this is the one-off only education of its kind as regards the dying process. It's just not out there.
Yeah. So it's fascinating because we've spoken before about end of life and the funeral industry and actually how they are connected. Going back though to end of life, what did you see when you were there, and what did you improve and what did you learn?
I've always said my work with the dying, every day is a school day.
Yeah.
But what I learnt the most was from other human beings. Yeah. Is seeing how people can face their death, but also seeing the challenges that come with denial, anger, frustration, just learning so much about another human being in the most difficult, challenging time. That's then what expanded my knowledge and my understanding to better support the next person. So it was all about openness, opening my mind, opening my heart to the fact that this is such an individual journey, but it needs the attention. Yeah. You know, we do it for birth. It's all hands on deck when somebody's born and they're pregnant and there's babies and this soul's coming in, and we seem to not do the same at the other end. Yeah. But that's exactly what's needed.
And what's really interesting is because when I arrange funerals, I talk about empowering people and giving control to that family over their loved one. And that's so important because there's small things you do, which I call connection points, enable the bereaved to be in a more positive place as they move forward. But actually you're starting that journey before.
Right early on,
And that's why it's so important. So could you give us some examples of things, how you created a space and an environment to help them move forward prior to that person dying?
Oh gosh, that's essentially what I do. So everything that I do with my soul midwifery is about that. I've got so many examples. So some people, for example, might get in touch with me when from the point of diagnosis. Yeah. One lady I was working with for a very long time a few years ago with breast cancer, I used to go to her chemo appointments with her. I used to be that extra person that she could rant to. I wasn't her husband or her family where she felt she had to worry about what she was saying or doing. So I was that space for her that she could be her. So she didn't necessarily need, I wasn't there at the end of her life. She needed me early on. But what we did in that space was she allowed herself to feel right from the beginning of her journey, which then enabled her to be a better mum, a better wife, a better friend, because the emotions were dealt with. So the rest of her dying journey was so much smoother than it potentially could have been because she dealt with a lot of the other feelings, having a safe space to do that away from her daily life. She could live. She could focus on living and then dying, but knowing that things had been done. Wow. She'd had that space. Sometimes I'll work with people when I often get called, and I say this, we're not an emergency service, but I do often get called in the emergency situations. And I say emergency because more often than not, people will call me up and say, my person's breathing sounds like this, help, what do I do? And it's not an emergency, it's actually a natural part of the body dying, but no one's told them that. Yeah. I can come in, educate them on the dying process. Your person's breathing sounds different because it's the mechanics of the lungs. Yeah. The fluid that is normally pumped around the body and the lungs isn't being pumped around as effectively because the body's shutting down.
You're providing calmness. I think during a time of death, when someone has died, from my point of view, I work very hard to create a calm environment for people.
Exactly.
And again, it's about calmness prior to. Yeah. So with the work that I've done around bereavement education in schools, I've had some funeral directors and individuals in the funeral industry not understanding how that is connected to a funeral. So that's really interesting. What's your view on that?
Well, going back to the person with the breathing, for example, the whole point of my time then with them was to reassure them on the whole dying process, to let them know how normal and natural actually what they were seeing and experiencing was. So it wasn't an emergency, they didn't need to panic.
Yeah.
What then ultimately happens is, I can't take away the fear, I can't take away the grief, that's still very much there. I'm not there to fix and rescue anything, I'm there to support what's already happening. I'm there to provide comfort, safety, love, reassurance. When that family then has that experience of death, they're going into that next part of the journey, the next phase of organising in a much more settled state, a much more accepting state.
Yeah.
A lot of what they've experienced with their person that's died has been in some way okay, a little bit more than it might have been.
Yeah.
So when they go on to the next bit and go to a funeral directors, if they're choosing to use one, is to then go, okay, so this is my experience, mum died at home, this is what we went through, I get that now.
Yeah.
And I can now focus on this bit. Rather than bringing all of that fear and emergency and panic into that then, which then obviously then if you want to look at it from a bigger picture, if they bring it into the funeral, it brings it into their own experience of the funeral, which creates the narrative of their grief, which then affects the next month, the next year, the next 10 years of their life. So all of this education and understanding has to go right back and then has that huge knock-on effect of every stage of dying, then of death, and then of funerals, and then starts their journey with grief. So it's all connected. It has to go right back to the end-of-life support. And I think when we can get our heads around that, we can connect and create that more fluid relationship from everybody when it comes to their end-of-life journey, to know exactly what happens, what stages there are, who to contact, what happens next, what might happen with the funeral director. It brings it all together.
Yeah.
But it's the same with anything. If you move house, you visit the house 3 or 4 times, you have a survey, you do your measurements, you invest all your time into figuring out if it's the right house for you. Dating, Tinder, you swipe through everybody's profiles. Having a baby, you do all the research. But you do all that so you know that every stage that follows then, you're starting on the right foot.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that with death? Why do we suddenly go, oh, it's difficult and challenging and I'm going to ignore it? And I think also we assume the funeral directors are going to do a lot of it for us, which they do. And funeral directors, incredible what they can achieve. But because we've become so detached and divorced, it then becomes something that happens also almost outside of us.
Yeah.
And we might not make the choices that we would make if we had the informed decisions and discussions beforehand.
And that's what I say as well, is when people come through the doors here, the fear is very clear to see, and I have to do reactive work, and I prefer to do proactive work.
Exactly, I totally get that.
So that's why with education in schools, we're actually planting seeds early doors in knowing how to communicate and to understand emotions. And it's basically what you're doing it later on down the line, but prior to death. So I think, and I hope people who are engaging with this podcast, they start to understand there is a true connection between end of life and a funeral, and actually, like you say, in 10 years' time. It's fascinating, and it concerns me how some people don't get it. It does worry me.
So I'm currently also working with Marie Curie as part of their Project Echo panel, and we were going through some statistics about how people feel about end of life, whether they talk about it, what they've done. The 2 biggest areas that people said, yes, that I've done, that more than half or nearly half, I think, of people said that they had completed or achieved or were working on, was funerals and finances. And I think that's because they can be tick box exercises. And we're all very good at doing. We're very good at wanting to do something. So when we have a challenging part in our life, whether it be a breakup, moving house, or we want to, right, well, I can do that, I can move that, I can call that person.
It's a transaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because we can go, right, well, if that happens, brilliant, tick. That happens, and we can control and manage that. So it's not surprising that those 2 topics around death, dying and funerals were the 2 biggest that people had done, because funerals, they feel they can either do a plan or they know cremation or burial, that they know all the key things and go, brilliant, I can tick and decide that. Same with the finances. So my will is done, that bank, that person, job done, will, sorted. Everything else is a bit grey. And everything else means thinking and feeling. And what we don't want to do with all of this is feel upset or hurt or challenged or struggling or stressed. So that's why in life it's our natural preservation to go, I don't want to feel stressed today, so I'm going to avoid that, because that's life.
It's frustrating.
It is frustrating, but we do it naturally, because otherwise we'd all be in a pit of despair every single day.
I think awareness, and that's what I'm saying to people, is it's not about waking up every day thinking, I'm going to die one day. It's just having that basic awareness.
Yes.
And I think what you said right at the start about educating.
Yes.
what that creates is true liberation.
Oh, and I said this, I've got a book and it's called What My Family Need to Know. I've got things like my HelloFresh delivery, my Spotify subscription date that it comes out of my bank account, all the little bits of my life. It's also got my funeral, my plans, what I want. It's got things about my son, so that, you know, whoever's organising my funeral, or God forbid it's not anytime soon, but my son's school stuff, his dentist, you know, if somebody needs to take over my life and organise my life and I get hit by a bus tomorrow, it's there.
Yeah.
And by doing that, I can live.
Yeah.
I can crack on every day knowing that those important things to me, my son is the most important thing in my life.
Yeah.
God forbid something happens to me today, tomorrow, anytime soon, he doesn't need to worry and everything's in place so that whoever supports him, it's done.
So that's from a practical point, but also from an emotional point. I think from a gratitude to our surroundings, our relationships.
Yeah.
You're awake and you're alive and you appreciate so much around you.
And my son knows.
Some people do.
No, and I think we take life for granted. Of course we do. We go life to life, things get busy, that we get sidetracked with everything going on and we prioritise things that probably don't need to prioritise.
Yeah.
The only time we stop is when someone dies. We get pulled right back into the present moment of, oh heck.
Yeah.
But we seem to then go, oh, well, I'm going to crack on again now. I'm not saying that grief is that flippant, but I mean with our own life, we suddenly find that momentum again and we lose those important things that happen and just think, oh, we stupidly think it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Or we think it's just going to happen when I fall asleep one day and don't wake up and I'm never going to have to actually organise anything about my death or deal with hospices or doctors. An elderly gentleman came to me with his funeral about his wife and he said to me, he said, I never thought I'd be doing this. And I wrongly assumed and said, I'm assuming, did you think that she would have outlived you? And he said, well, no, I never thought she'd die.
Yeah.
The torment and the torture that this poor man then had to go through because he had no clue.
Yeah.
He had no clue how to honour his wife of 60 plus years. He knew her, of course he did, but he didn't know about funerals. He didn't know about choices and options and songs. And there was this narrative of, well, it should be done this way, shouldn't it? And we had to unpick some of that to allow him a bit more autonomy and choice to honour her and their relationship. No matter how challenging those conversations might be in life, they are a million times worse and heavier after somebody's gone, if you've not had them. So to have that honest, raw conversation with your family, your person, your tribe, your village, whoever is around you, if you know that these people are going to be part of your care, your death and your funeral, they need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
If you don't do it now, it's a gift. It's an exchange.
Yeah.
So, like I said, for me, all of my stuff is done. I've gifted my family the gift of knowledge, the gift of peace. They don't have to worry about the kind of funeral I want or the kind of death that I want because I've expressly put it all in there. My son's 12, going on 21. But he is very much a part of my world. He's done some of my Facebook Lives with me, with the education. We talk openly. He's been to my hospice. You know, he talks about death. He's decided he wants, so I'm going to be cremated, and he wants to put some of my ashes in a magic 8 ball.
Okay.
So that when you shake it and get the answer, so he'll go, oh, should I go do homework or go to the pub? Oh, no, do homework. He said, no, I feel like you're telling me what to do.
Okay.
But he came up with that himself.
Yeah.
He also knows what songs I want. So we've got our song that's mine and his, and every time it comes on, he'll go, don't say it, I know you want it at your funeral. And I'm like, yes, I do. Because that also, as a child, as I know you very sadly know, he's empowered with some bit of knowledge that he can do something.
And that's my whole point.
When I'm gone.
I think that your relationship is going to be healthier, more in tune, connected, but truly grateful for each other.
Yes.
And for him, he'll always be aware his mum won't be here one day, and because of that, wow, come here, Mum. Yeah, come here, Mum.
Yes, it is very much like that.
And that's what I'm
very much.
I go a step further, and I'm looking to get one of those sort of like those calendars of how many years you got left.
Oh yeah,
and
wow.
It sounds a bit extreme.
No, I get it.
For me,
I get
it's
it.
Again, like I want to get every ounce out of life, and actually, whilst we're here, let's be kind.
Yes.
Let's make an impact.
Why aren't we living our best lives? Yeah. But by best lives, it doesn't have to be spending thousands of pounds doing extravagant stuff. My best life was when my son comes up and gives me a cuddle out of nowhere. Yeah. My best life is that quiet cup of tea in the morning.
Present.
Yes.
Being present. Yeah.
And you can be so much more present if you have these conversations, if you make the notes about what you want, have the conversations, the difficult conversations, you can then step right back into the present moment.
Yeah.
And I've said to people, even if it's a Post-it note, even if it's a Post-it note that says burial, pink flowers, no Elvis. or something. That post-it note then becomes the most precious thing in your people's lives when you're gone. And that gives them something to go on.
I've arranged funerals for families where I'm sort of sat down with them. Okay, so what are your thoughts of the funeral? Like, we don't know. We don't know. I said, okay, well, just make it really, really basic and simple. We're looking at the crematorium service, or we're looking for a service somewhere and followed by burial, we don't know. We don't know. And that must be horrendous, being in that position. And then it's a case of just guessing our way through it, you know.
And that, I think, this is why as well everything is so. There's this whole part of end of life is a journey, and it starts when we realise that we are going to die, whether that be we get a terminal diagnosis or whether we're told that there's no more treatment. Whatever that point is for each of us, there's a point where we are told or we know that we're not going to get better. That journey with the tribe, it takes a village, as they say. That journey for us and our village around us then continues all the way through till after the funeral, because of everything that we've just talked about. And that should continue, and therefore the support that people get should be a fluid thing across this whole journey. They're different parts and they're different things, and they mean different things to different people, but that whole bit is that big umbrella. That end of life is the umbrella, and that includes funerals. So all of this, the talking earlier, has a knock-on positive effect on every stage then under that umbrella. I think also it's the social narrative of hospitals, of treatment, of science, of research. We've come so far that we think we can fix everything, and that includes death.
We saw it during COVID. Our relationship during COVID with death was highlighted because people can't die. You know, people can't. No, but that, I'm not saying that what happened, you know, was awful. It was awful. It was terrible. But it highlighted how bad our nation's relationship with death actually is.
And I think COVID helped in a way because it highlighted the number of deaths. We were faced with it on our tellies, whether we liked it or not. And I think it did create a fear, but it did also create things like webcasting a funeral. It created another narrative around death. However, what we've done as human beings and as a society is almost forget that and go back a bit. Like I said about when you lose somebody, then that journey it takes you on, you go back into your normal routine of life at some point. We're very good at going, oh my gosh, and we pay attention, but then we want to carry on because we want the softer stuff, which I get, I do the same. But while we're in the thick of it, that's an opportunity as well. So if we can't address things when our life is fluffy and going well, fine. But actually, some proverbial is going to hit the fan at some point. Use it then. When you are cracked open emotionally, and you feel like things can't get any worse, use that as an opportunity then to keep digging.
My favourite expression is fix the roof while the sun is shining.
Absolutely, exactly that. And that's what we're asking people to do now.
So my next sort of question for you will be, you mentioned about some of the changes we saw with funerals, like the webcast facility. How do you think funerals are changing, and are they changing? Is my question to you. I came into,
as a celebrant only a couple of years ago, obviously adding that to my business. I think I then came in at a great time, because I think I came in at the time when things were changing. I think COVID made us look differently, and although we had to make changes, not all for the better, because we became still very disconnected, I think it made people pay attention to, well, how do we work around that? Let's find a way to connect back together, because we did recognise that connection was actually the most important thing. And I think then what has since rolled on from that is actually, well, we don't need to all be at the creme then to celebrate. We don't need to all be in person. We can be all over the world, and maybe the memorial's held on a 3-hour Zoom session. You know, maybe it's webcast all over the world. You know, we did it differently. So being the kind of person that I am, and also wanting to look at things differently, personally, everything being about choice, autonomy, everything being bespoke, because we are all unique. You know, there's no way that you could have a template service for all of us.
Copy and paste.
No, you can't, because we are not copy and paste. We are so unique. And I think that's the change that I'm personally seeing, and I'm grateful that I consider myself an advocate of that and a supporter of all of those changes. But you have to talk. So because I'm sharing it, I am having a lot of people come to me to go, oh, I saw the post you shared about a funeral in a farm. How did that work? Can I make that happen? So we've got to be sharing it, and I think that's a change that still needs to happen, is the talking about it more. It's happening, and when it happens, we share it. People go, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. But then it gets parked and we carry on with life. Actually, no, let's again unpick that a bit. Let's share a bit more. Let's explore it. Like, I don't want a service in a crematorium. I'm having a whole day event with my coffin present. I want the watermark from the wine glass on the top of my coffin. I also want my face plastered all over my coffin, like a Moonpig version. I want fireworks, I want singing, I want tears, I want stories. I want it to be just a big party all about me.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Because 30 minutes in the creme is not me.
Yeah.
30 minutes in the creme is absolutely right for some people. And I think it's the conversation about, but what about when it's not?
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting is with the rise of an unattended direct cremation.
Yeah.
So with ourselves here, I will talk to a family and I will suggest connection points from that person coming into our care through to the direct cremation taking place. And that is for those who are engaging with this podcast who aren't sure.
Yeah.
The coffin is taken to a crematorium and the family to not go into the crematorium. But we will suggest connection points throughout. So to spend time in the chapel of rest, to come at 7:15 in the morning and help place their loved one's coffin onto the ambulance or the hearse, to create connection. And I say actually doing these certain connection points can be as powerful as a funeral service.
Absolutely. And that's what I think people don't understand about the direct cremation. Like you say, we have that clinical disposal of the body, essentially, is what obviously legally has to happen. But obviously, other than that, how you then celebrate and honour your person can still happen. Even if your person has said, I want direct cremation, I don't want any fuss, is what we normally hear, isn't it? I don't want that, don't waste your money. There are still ways to honour and connect. And I think connection points is I love that term. To have those moments, to have those little nuggets of connection, of love with your person can still be made in a multitude of ways that don't cost a fortune, but they are important. And funnily enough, I had a conversation recently where this person has now been told they are terminal. They've been given a very short prognosis of 2 to 3 months. They have said to their children, just send me off, direct cremation, don't want anything. They've spoken very openly, but they've been very sure and firm on don't waste your money, don't do anything. So now what's happened is the children have gone, okay, oh, but hold on, then what? You're my mum. Like, what happens then?
Yeah.
No, but so now what has to happen is a conversation of, and it's about empowering the daughter as well to go, but I need my moment for you, with you, mum. I need, even if it's just a cup of tea by the beach.
Yeah.
But you set aside some time where you honour it. Everyone's lighting a candle at midday for your mum. Something.
Yeah.
And I think we need to have those conversations to explore that, to go, this is actually going to be important for you with your journey. Your mum may have gone, but you need it.
Again, it's the education around who the funeral service is actually for.
Yeah. I supported a gentleman who was only 46 very recently before Christmas. He was adamant, he wanted a funeral, he didn't want to call it a funeral service, he wanted an event. He wanted something, but he didn't want it to be a morbid church or crematorium situation. He didn't want the traditional. He said, but what do we do? So we talked about everything, and he had his service in a hotel. There was a roaming mic. Everyone shared. We had
was his
stories.
coffin there as well?
No, he had a natural burial on the week before.
Okay, sorry.
So that was a separate memorial service in itself, which again, he dictated what he wanted for that. But his main thing about both events was, I want people to be however they need to be. So for him, although both memorials were for him, his intention was to be about everybody else. Yeah. And I think it was an incredible, both services were incredible. The power, the magic, the love, it was amazing to be part of it. But he was honest and he faced it. He was only 46 with 2 young daughters, 4 and 6. And everybody went for a dip in the sea as well on the day before his the memorial in the church, in the hotel, because that was very much what he was about. Everybody froze. It was 19th of December, so it was bloody freezing. Yep. But they were like,
Ace, fantastic.
Brilliant. But everybody said, if he at 46 with 2 young daughters could face the end of his life the way he faced it, we can face a dip in the sea.
Yeah, it's great.
And it can happen.
Yeah.
But he was forced to face it. He very much embraced life. But until he got his diagnosis 2 years before, it changed. But he faced it head on.
Yeah, it's what I was about to say. It's fantastic. It's inspiring,
isn't it?
Because it inspires then other people to go, wow.
And it inspired everybody there. Yeah, everybody there went, I didn't even know that we could be celebrating somebody like this. I didn't know that this is how a farewell or funeral
people said
could
to
have
me,
been done.
after I've arranged a funeral with them or spent time with them, like, wow, is it wrong for me to say I've really enjoyed this?
Yes, I get that all the time.
It should be a time where a special time. Yeah, it's not miserable.
It can and should be a time to remember, because it is a poignant part of the start of our new normal and our grief without that person. It symbolises a shift, and it should be honoured. as such. And it can then and should be something to be remembered, because that is the moment then that your life then does suddenly stop with that person.
Yeah.
Because that's the moment, there is no planning or preparation after that. There's nothing to worry about in the sense of the bit between somebody's death and the funeral. People use that period, don't they, to survive. It's like they've got a function or a business, or they've got something to look forward to. They've got an event that they know they've got to get to. Once that happens, that's hugely significant. More so to some than others, but either way, the moment that finishes and you wake up the next day, it's like, now what?
Yeah.
So if that experience of a funeral has been whatever that person wanted it to be and whatever those people needed it to be in it, how they wake up that next day changes. And they change if they've had the conversations about their funeral, about their death, about dying, all in advance.
Yeah.
That moment, that morning is changed forever based on every single one of those conversations in there.
Yeah.
And actually the conversations before they're poorly.
Yeah. The loss of my mum at a young age.
Yeah.
It was a very confusing time to understand what that relationship was after she died. And it's almost, at that time, it was very much, well, that's done now. But as I've grown and obviously got older, we realise that it doesn't stop. The relationships can't stop.
Nope.
Physically, yes, but emotion and love always carries on.
Yeah.
And I say this to a young family recently who lost their mother, that it's taken me a long time to discover this, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
You can't stop emotion.
Nope.
It continues.
Science proves this. So science proves that love is an energy.
Yeah.
So that when you have that love and that connection with somebody, there's a book called The Invisible String for children, and it talks about everybody has that invisible string. It's that connection you have to a person you care about, that no matter where you are, whether somebody's dead or on the other side of the world, that invisible string is still there. Now, no matter what faith or religion or belief system you have, science proves effectively that love, that invisible string, is very much an energy. Science also proves that energy does not die.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Wherever you have with your person doesn't go anywhere. It transmutes, it changes, and we have to find a way to live with it differently. We have to connect to it maybe in a different way. Yeah. But it's still there.
Again, though, this conversation, some people, I don't think, will believe it. They don't believe what we're saying. We both know it's correct and it's true, but again, if we can show people this, then the relationship with death will change as well.
Yep.
We're taking away the fear almost.
So it's also, a big part of my role as a soul midwife is to also facilitate or empower people to explore their own faith, to explore what they think, not necessarily about death, but life.
Yeah.
Is there something divine that they connect to? Is it that they have no faith, which essentially you could argue is a faith? To have faith in nothing is still having faith in something. Yeah. Explore that, because that exploration of self, of what you connect to, if anything, how you connect to it, what you believe about that part of life in the world, that can become a huge support then when you die. Yeah. So if people are listening to this going, well, Katie's waffling on, it's a bunch of nonsense, that's fine. But what is it you do believe then? Yeah. If anything. I could be talking a completely foreign language, and that's absolutely fine. What language do you speak?
And this is the problem, though, is because some people don't want to look within. They're scared of what they will find.
Yep. And again, I get that, and that's the human thing. We don't want to unpick trauma
But that's how we find fulfillment and true happiness.
We know that. But unfortunately, we've probably experienced things that we've had to unpick. Yeah. We've had to, and actually I think everybody has, but how we deal with that then is our own choice. Yeah. But it's the owning it. So if you don't want to unpick and delve deeper, and you don't want to find out what language you speak, you don't want to delve into your faith or spirituality, that's fine. Yeah. But I'd also say to people that not only has a knock-on effect on your life, but it will have a knock-on effect on your death. Yeah. So
what we're saying is, at that point, it's too late. It's like we need to do the work prior. So when we get to that point of I'm about to die, I'm at complete fulfillment and complete ease, because I've dealt with all that stuff.
Or actually, even if you haven't dealt with it, you've gone there. Yeah, yeah. There's an understanding. There's an understanding, there's a connection to something. And if you crack it open sooner, you have an option then when you're faced with the end of your life. It's not like you're trying to bang down a brick wall. You've already opened the door. Yeah. There's always opportunities to investigate, to explore, to delve within yourself, to not just live a healthier, richer life, but to then have a more peaceful death. Yeah, yeah. We can't fix it for everybody.
So this is really interesting then. So you've been with a lot of people who are dying. Yep. That you've been there for the last breaths. Mm-hmm. What have you seen, and have people discussed their regrets with you? Are there things that you can educate us on to do now? Obviously, we've discussed about finding fulfillment, but are there
Yeah.
like some basic things, like common regrets that people have?
Yeah, God. Some people ask me about things like deathbed confessions, and you hear that. There's only probably been literally 2 or 3 times that I can think of in my 10, 11 years of doing this where I've heard some really challenging things. The most common thing you hear is, I wish. I should have.
Wow.
And it's things like, I wish I'd taken that holiday.
Yeah.
Or, I wish I made up with my sister. Or, I should have worked less.
Yeah.
I should have taken the kids to school that day that they really bugged me to, but I said I was too busy. It's the simple moments in life
Wow.
that pass us by, that suddenly we go, I would give anything to get that school morning back with my child. I would give anything to have that extra birthday that I turned down because I didn't want to see my sister because she annoyed me the week before. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has to make up and be friends.
Yeah.
But to have that awareness of if you have things in your life that you know are emotionally challenging for you, unpick them a bit.
Yeah.
You may not make those relationships up. You may not make that relationship with your sister, but maybe there is some peace that you can find within yourself that that's not going to happen. And as far as things like the I wish and I should have, do it now.
Yeah. Show intent now within yourself
Yeah.
to explore, to fix any issues.
I do it myself. My work can be all consuming. My work can be 7 days a week. So when my son then says to me, oh, we're going to watch a film later, I'm like, mate, I can't tonight. And then suddenly I'm like, Katie, watch the film.
Yeah.
Like, watch the sodding film. It may be something I don't even want to watch. And he may last half an hour and then go off and not watch the whole film.
Being present.
But I'll take that half an hour over telling him no.
Yeah.
So within myself, because again, God forbid, if I find out tomorrow I've got 2 weeks to live, I'm going to give anything to get that half an hour back.
I feel like we are so fortunate because when I'm at church services or crematorium services daily, and I'm listening to the eulogy or the address, or I'm arranging funerals, I feel so present. I'm fully aware that I will be in the hearse one day.
Yeah.
And because of that, I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
I've got so much I want to do.
And it gives you that new lease of life. And I think we are very lucky that we are in a world where it is smacking us in the face every day.
Yeah.
And we're not, most people's conversations and the narrative around death is very different to ours. So I am also aware that the conversations we're having today, some people might be going, yeah, but we're not in that world. We don't get it. Like, you're looking at it differently, which we are. But I would also argue that anybody can look at it this way.
Yes.
Anybody can do this.
Yeah.
It's just whether you choose to.
And I think, again, back to bereavement awareness in schools, I think I've offended some people.
I bet.
By thinking, leave my kids alone.
Yeah.
Leave them alone, you know.
Who are you to talk about that? Don't you dare bring that. Don't you upset them.
I keep saying, like, your kids are already seeing this.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
Oh, the thing with children, I get asked a lot, should children go to a funeral? Should children see their person when they're dying? Now, I can't comment on anybody's parenting. They know their children better than anybody. But I'll never forget some training I had with a child psychologist years ago who said to me, the only thing you need to remember with children is honesty.
Yeah.
Always honest. So you need to give your child the opportunity to make their own decision. Give them the honesty, the child level facts and the truth.
Yeah.
And let them make a decision. Now, if they're too young, you do have to step in as a parent to make that call. Yeah. However, even if you decide not to put them in a situation, don't force it. Like, don't feel like you are shutting the door on them.
Yeah.
Because if kids don't know the truth, they create their own narrative, which is often a million times worse than the truth itself. And again, it's that impact then later on down the line. We're talking about grief later on if we talk about death earlier. It's exactly the same for children. So this young gentleman, the 46-year-old with the 2 girls, had his burial, natural burial ground where the girls were present. They were at the memorial in the hotel. They saw their dad in the chapel of rest in his coffin dead. Of course it's upsetting. Of course it was a huge deal and lots of conversations happened. Kids are great at being very flippant and being very...
black and white.
Yeah, very black. And it was very much like, oh my God, that's Daddy. Had their emotion and went, are we going now?
Yeah.
You lead by that. They were fine with that. Let kids lead. They will tell you or show you if they're uncomfortable.
And I would say just listen.
Yes.
Stop,
just tune in.
Stop telling them and talking at them about what's happening.
Yeah.
Just start asking questions, open questions. Just sit back and listen and tell them your voice is being heard.
And that's why I think a huge part of me being able to do this work was thanks to my mum and dad being very honest with me growing up. So when my grandparents and family people died, they told me they died. They used the correct language, which is really important. Dead, death, dying, body stopped, heart stopped, no more breathing, none of this.
Slipped away.
Slipped away, sleeping, which is the worst thing you can tell a child, because either they're afraid to sleep or they don't want anybody else to go to sleep.
They've moved on.
Moved on where?
Yeah.
We lost him. Where we can just go find him. You know, he's passed away. Passed on where? Like, it doesn't make sense to them. You've got to give them the honest truth, and just be there. Just be there with them.
Yeah.
And it's someone else I spoke to who's a child support worker. She said, which is brilliant, we need to learn resilience. It's a skill. If we are putting children in a position where they never experience anything tough or difficult or challenging, nothing heavy or dark, they have no opportunity to build that natural skill of resilience.
Yeah.
We assume kids are resilient because they can be very flippant and very black and white and bounce from Lego to death to, you know, but they need to learn that these tough emotions and that the ones that are difficult to manage is a process and is part of humanity and part of life. Yeah. If we stop all that, and don't get me wrong, I want to wrap my son up in bubble wrap and never let him have anything hurt him ever. But I know the reality is that if I don't let him have the heartbreak of when a girlfriend doesn't fancy him anymore at the local youth club, or his mates make a decision not to invite him to the park, all of those things that are causing emotion in him, I have to let him feel them. Yeah. As much as I might want to go and have a word with the other kids and go to the park and I can't do any of that.
Yeah, that's where he'll find growth.
That's the learning, the resilience. That's the skill of these emotions are a process. They're a fluid thing that come and go, and they're challenging, and then they're okay, and then they're really icky again. But then actually it's not too bad. And actually 6 months later, I don't feel like I want to cry all the time, and that comes into my head. Yeah. That's life. Yeah. That's life. Which is why the education about it in schools, and to let them know that these things are very natural and they happen, is so important, so that when they do, they go, oh, hold on, I know this is very natural for me and I need to learn this. Yeah. We're creating stronger people. Yes. Better informed people. Yeah. And I think actually it will actually help with mental health. Hugely. Gosh. You know, it's learning that your person died, but it wasn't a failure. They weren't punished. It's just a really sucky, awful thing that happens, and it's an awful lottery sometimes, and it's horrible. I had a young gentleman in his 20s that said to me, his family were angry because he was in his 20s. His family kept saying to him, why you? Why are we going through this? Why us? He turned around and he went, why not me? Yeah. I thought, if a 20-odd-year-old can get that. Incredible. It is, and that's you. And I think about those moments, and when I see that, I said it was brave, and one guy said, I'm not brave. He said, I'm just living. He's like, I'm getting by, I'm surviving. I consider it to be brave because these people I see that deal with these things in such a brave, honest, truthful way, that's where I learned. You said in the beginning about things that I've learned. That's what I learn. I learn about how incredible human beings can be. I learn the inner strength that we have. I learn the integrity that we can gain, the authenticity that comes out of this when we are brave and we face it. And community and connection. Yes, and the love. It's out there. It is out there. Yeah. And I think both of us can see how it can work on a bigger scale. Oh God, how it should be working. You know, it excites me so much. You know, I can picture it now, how it's going to be. But it's not. It's how it was. It's how it was, and it is how it still is in many other faiths and cultures all around the world. It takes a village, as I've said a few times, but as a soul midwife as well, I am, on the inside, that 5,000-year-old crone or hag of the village that sits there and holds space for the dying. That's what you had. And in other religions, it is that elder, normally female, that holds space, that either reads prayer or mantra. It's about crystals, sound, vibrations, Mother Earth. It's bringing in all of those other holistic things that we have around us to create that loving space, with people coming in and out, people making food, people mopping their brow, washing the body, children running around, singing songs. Being together. Yes. That's always how it was. Medicine came along, incredible. Research, science, technology, amazing. But what we've done is then become so divorced and detached from the humanness of death. Because death, and I say this a lot, death is a human experience, not a clinical one. It is a human experience. It should be. But it is, we've lost it, we've become very British and stiff upper lip, and we've become very... Again, there's the dying bit, the death bit, and the funeral bit, as if they're all different and separate. It's all connected. It's all connected because every bit affects the other. And we can jump from the dying bit to planning the funeral bit, which also then makes the death bit better. If we can have a better death bit, this bit and the funeral becomes easier. If we do the funeral bit while we're well, like I've done, the dying and death bit then is better, and then so's that bit. So it's all a web of stuff that needs to stay together. Because that's how it should be. You know, it refreshes me talking to you. But I get excited about this stuff, and it's like, because I can see it, and that's the other thing. When people say to me, well, you know, how can you say that? Because I've sat and watched this and been in it for 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
I've seen grief, I've seen death, I've seen some traumatic and difficult deaths, but they are actually few and far between.
And I've seen empowerment. I've seen how
I've seen magic.
Young people. Yeah, it's magical.
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, there is beauty, there is joy, there is love.
So, education. So you do your masterclass, Dying for a Cuppa.
Yes.
So what is that? What does it look like? And who engages with the course?
So the Dying for a Cuppa Masterclass is run off of my website. So it's an online program. It is it's death education from a human perspective. It's self-paced. So when people sign up, they do video to video, and there's a workbook that goes with all that with extra hints and tips and everything like that. So we cover emotions, communication, eating and drinking, and the body. So the four main things that I've noticed in my 11 years is that those are the four main things about the dying process that people struggle with. So they can't understand why people are acting or feeling the way that they do. And that's from the perspective of both the dying and the carer. Communication, everything we've said, it's how do you talk about dying to the dying? And I go through hints and tips about communication skills. Not interrupting, listening, holding space. What are you bringing to the table? Is it your insecurities that you're actually struggling about? Reading between the lines. Does your person want to talk? Just sit with them if that's what they need. Or when they say they're feeling rough, or when they say things like, do you know what, I'm done. I'm ready to die. I can't do this anymore. Instinctively, as a person we care about, we jump in and go, don't say that, Mum. Don't be so morbid. Oh, you're just having a rough day. It'll be better tomorrow. Don't say that. You know it upsets Dad. Let's hold on, let's look at that. Why can't we just go, I'm sorry you feel that way, Mum?
Yeah, I'm here.
Or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just nothing. And power in a pause. Letting people have that moment, letting it land. Why do we need to jump in? It's because we feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If somebody's offloading or sharing or angry or just crying, ask them, what do you need from me? Do you need me to help you and offer you advice, or do you just need me to be here and give you a hug or hold your hand? Two very different things, but again, even asking that can be powerful, because it also goes back to the person to go, oh, what do I need?
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, can you just hold me? Or can you just sit there, can you stick the kettle on? Or, actually, no, can you help me because I can't make sense of this? And also then, when we don't know what to do for people that are struggling, it gives us something to do. It gives us a tool, a resource, and that's what a lot of the emotion and communication modules are about.
Yeah.
And then the last two modules, the eating and drinking and the body. The eating and drinking is one of the biggest conversations and most common conversations I have, is when people think their people are dying because they're not eating, whereas in actual fact, they're not eating because they are dying.
Okay.
So it's different. And we grow up feeding and watering our people. Our community life is about eating and drinking together. It's food, it's nourishing, it's, it brings us together. It's what we do as a family, it's what we do with our people. When people stop eating and drinking, that's huge. And then we think we as carers may be doing something wrong.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that a dying body does not want to and cannot eat.
Yeah.
Because everything starts to change. So it's a clinical process as well as an emotional one. Because also people can feel upset about the fact they've lost their appetite because they love their little glass of Pinot Grigio of an evening, and now suddenly it makes them feel sick. Or the fact they've had porridge every morning and they start going off their porridge. We go, but that's what you do, Dad. You have your porridge every morning. It's huge, it's layered. But it's very much a natural part of the dying process. So we go through that in a lot of detail.
It's our own insecurities again, isn't it? We're thinking about what we're used to, what we're used to seeing.
Yep.
So
and we
again,
panic.
Education is the key.
This is why I made the whole eating and drinking a whole separate module, because it is one of the most, it's the hardest thing to get your head around because it goes against the grain of everything we've been taught and our way of living. But once people make that shift, they go, oh.
Yeah. And
it's like a weight's lifted. And it's even with the fluid. The amount of conversations or times that I hear people go, my dad needs to go to hospital, he needs IV fluids, he's dehydrated. It's like, yes, because the body naturally dehydrates to get ready to die. Yeah. And you could put an IV fluid, you could put an IV line in his arm, the fluid will pool in his arm because his body's not functioning to process it. The fluid will not hydrate him because the dying body cannot hydrate itself.
Again, it's letting people die with dignity.
Yes, and comfort. If you clog up,
kindness.
If you clog up a dying body with food and drink, it can make the process worse and even worse, painful.
Yeah, and create trauma for yourself then as well, for what you see.
Because the muscles get weak, so they can't chew, they can't swallow. So when somebody is there chewing that one bit of thing in their mouth for ages, that's all sign that the body's getting weaker, ready to die.
So you're teaching about emotions that we're going to go through, how to create calmness, and then actually practical stuff.
Yes, lots of practical stuff.
Stuff you're going to see.
Yes.
But when that happens, don't panic.
There's checklists that people can have if they're looking after people at home. I've done a who's who chart, so who to call for what might be needed. And interestingly, out of all the things that it's got, like GP, oncologist, district nurse, at the bottom is friends and family, and on the end, out of all the things that might need to be done, like treatment, medicines, at the end is advanced care planning. And every profession can do advanced care planning, and everything above the top, friends and family can do as well. So this is the whole village thing. All of the friends and family and all the advanced care planning is what should be done by all of us all the time anyway.
Yeah.
It's very self-paced. People do it as and when they want, but it is just there to be hugely supportive, whatever your role as a carer or a death or healthcare professional. So funeral directors, to get a better understanding. So when their families come in and go, my mum's breathing was awful, they can go, can I support you to understand why that might have been? You can better support your families. Carers, nursing homes, hospices, GPs, paramedics, everybody in health or death care, this training is relevant. And even the ones that I've spoken to and they've done the training that have years, and I mean 10, 20, 30 years of experience, are gaining something. Because it's human. It's bringing us back present within our own. It makes us question our own mortality, but it makes us think about it from a very human perspective, which we can lose sight of. Particularly when we're in it all the time.
It's fantastic, and it excites me. The thought of getting everyone in the room together, from every part of that journey, from end of life, well, school, and then through to the end of life, getting the bad news, throughout. All
of it.
To get all these professionals together in a room, it would really excite me to educate everyone. So your sort of mission and focus, we've got supporting the dying, honouring the dead, and educating the living, which I love.
I was so chuffed when I came up with that, but then I thought that's exactly what I do. It's exactly what I do.
What is the future of Katie Costello?
I would love, particularly for the training, to be a bigger thing. I would love it to be available to schools or to add teachers. Again, teachers could understand then if they have little people in their schools that are going through this and going, my mummy sounded awful, whatever. My mummy didn't have her ice cream last night with me, and mummy always has ice cream with me. The teachers are better empowered to go, actually, when someone's really poorly, their body doesn't need the food anymore. And it's okay that mummy doesn't like ice cream because that's actually her body looking after her. It can be done, and then they go, okay then, so mummy's okay.
It's a kind of place straight away.
So there's lots of things I want to do. The Dying for a Cuppa Masterclass is a big focus because I really genuinely believe the education should be there, and it is there for the greater good. And for everything we've talked about, it educates and supports people right from early on all the way through, so that their experience with the dying or their own dying journey is better, healthier because of the relationship they have with it. Everybody's journey with grief because they understand what their person went through. And then actually whatever agency or organisation they connect with through the dying or death or funerals afterwards, if everyone's had this education training, they know they're getting the same message. So it's consistency for people. The support is there on a more compassionate human level. So that's what I'm hoping for. Do it now, because trust me, you may not be able to think about it when you're in the thick of it. So do it, have these conversations while you're well, when you're coming from a place of rationale and calm and understanding and clarity. Don't wait till you're in the thick of grief or pain or illness. Do it now, then you don't have to worry about it in the thick of it because it's done. And then we can promise you when we see it later on down the line, you will be in so much of a better place.
Katie, it is an absolute honour to speak. It's the conversation excites me, and thank you for the work you're doing.
No, thank you for what you're doing. This is brilliant, and thank you for having me.
No, it's great, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
A huge thank you for watching our podcast, Death, A Changing Industry. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel as we have some fascinating guests lined up. Thank you so much.